$1,500, that's just the roof over your head. Plus $120 just to stay insured. Plus $465 to eat. Plus $700 to get to work. Plus $130 to have a phone. Plus $250 to keep the lights on. Plus $300 minimum payments on debt you already have. I'm going to keep going, and at some point in the next few minutes, the number at the bottom of this list is going to pass the number you bring home every month. And when that happens, I need you to understand something before you feel anything about it. That moment is not about you. It's not a character flaw. It's not a discipline problem. It's math. And there are a lot of people who have been counting on you never doing this math, never sitting down, never adding it all up, never seeing the total in one place at one time. So let's do it together. $50,000 a year. After federal taxes, Social Security, Medicare, and average state tax, call it $3,000 a month. Some of you take home a little more, some a little less. Doesn't matter. Watch what happens. $3,000. That's it. That's the finish line. Now let's see what's trying to beat it. Before the math, 2 minutes on the advice, because you've heard it. Save 20%. Build a 6-month emergency fund. Start investing now. Compound interest. Time in the market. And none of it is wrong in theory. The people who wrote those rules were writing for someone with margin, someone where survival costs X and income is X plus 800, and the 800 is the gap. Build the gap, fill the gap, grow the gap. That's the whole playbook. What nobody in that industry ever did, not Dave Ramsey, not Suze Orman, not the financial wellness pamphlet your HR department hands you at orientation, is run the actual math on what survival costs in 2026 against what a median earner takes home. They assumed the gap exists. They built the curriculum on top of the assumption. And if the gap isn't there, the entire playbook breaks down, and nobody tells you that. You just keep trying to follow advice that was never designed for your situation, feeling worse about yourself every month you don't hit the 20%. You've been feeling guilty about math that was never going to work. That ends today. Let's build the floor. $3,000 a month. That's home base. Line item 1, rent. Mid-cost of living city. 1-bedroom apartment, not Manhattan. The national median for a 1-bedroom is around $1,450. We're calling it $1,500, conservative, mid-market, realistic for where most people watching this actually live. $1,500. Running total $1,500. Half. Gone. One line item. You haven't eaten. You haven't driven to work. You haven't turned on a light. 50% of take home. And the only thing you bought is the right to sleep indoors. I was paying around $1,400 when I first ran this math on myself. I remember thinking, okay, that's just what rent costs. That's normal. And that thought, that's just what it costs, is the first trick. Each number, individually, feels like a fact of life. The trick is the total. Keep going. Line item 2, health insurance. You've got employer coverage. Your contribution for single coverage is $120 a month. The average employee share for single coverage in 2025 per the Kaiser Family Foundation. The total annual premium for a single worker is over $9,000. You pay $1,200 of it. The rest is your compensation that gets routed directly to United Health or CVS, Aetna, or Cigna before you ever see it. Running total, $1,620. And here's the number that doesn't appear on your pay stub. Your deductible, the amount you owe before insurance pays anything, averages $1,886 a year. That's $157 a month sitting as a liability. Not owed yet. Owed the first time you break something, need a prescription, or end up in urgent care. The US spends roughly twice what Canada, Germany, and the UK spend per person on healthcare. That delta is $400 to $600 a month. You're paying a premium for being American that citizens of peer nations don't pay. Running total, $1,620, 54% of $3,000, and you still haven't eaten. Line item 3, food. The USDA moderate plan for a single meal, not extravagant, not bare bones. The middle option, $465 a month, home cooking only, 0 restaurant meals, every meal, every week, cooked yourself. Running total, $2,085, 70% of take home. While we're on the grocery line, the FTC released a supply chain report in 2024. Grocery retailer markups rose from around 5% to 7% between 2020 and 2023 and stayed elevated after input costs came back down. The Groundwork Collaborative, working from Commerce Department data, found that corporate profits drove 53% of consumer price inflation in the second and third quarters of 2023. Tyson Foods doubled their profits in a single quarter in 2022. Cargill posted $6.68 billion in profit that year, double what they made 2 years earlier. Record margins, record profits. Same period your grocery bill went up. Your 465 isn't because food costs more to make. It's because the margin reset held. Every time you swipe at the grocery store, you're partially paying Cargill a dividend. But you're not doing this wrong. You're shopping. That's the only option they left you. Line item 4, the car. People treat this one like it's a lifestyle choice. Like if you made better decisions, you wouldn't be paying it. You would not. Used car with a loan. Payment $300 a month. Gas per AAA 2025, about $163. Insurance, $150. Maintenance, call it $87, $700 a month total. Running total, $2,785, 93% of take home. More than 80% of American workers commute by car not because they love payments, but because public transit accounts for under 4% of all commutes, and far less outside of cities. The car-dependent infrastructure of this country was built over 70 years through policy decisions that also happened to generate enormous revenue for auto manufacturers, insurance carriers, and the oil industry. You don't have the car because you chose it. You have it because the alternative is not having a job. State Farm, Allstate, Progressive, all three reported strong profits. Look, at the same time, they were raising your premiums 20 to 30% between 2022 and 2024. Your insurance didn't go up because you became a worse driver. The car isn't a lifestyle choice. It's infrastructure someone else built and then handed you the bill for. Line item 5, the phone. J.D. Power 2025 puts the average single-line bill at $141. We're calling it $130, running total $2,915. $85 left. Not for savings, not for emergencies, for everything else. That's your margin after 5 line items, and we haven't hit utilities. Line item 6, utilities. Electricity, gas, water for a 1-bedroom, $250. Running total, $3,165. Stop, $3,165. Take home, $3,000. The floor just passed the paycheck. Let that sit. We haven't added debt. No streaming services, no gym, no dining out, no clothing, no haircut, no dental visit, no emergency. This is the floor rent, insurance, groceries, car, phone, utilities, and it already costs more than you make. I ran this math on myself when I was making 42 grand a year. I kept trying to figure out why the end of the month always felt the same, like I was treading water, like no matter how careful I was, the number never really moved. And when I finally added it up, the number at the bottom was almost nothing, sometimes negative. And I had been telling myself for 2 years that I must be doing something wrong, that I wasn't disciplined enough. The math didn't have room. That's all it was. You're not doing this wrong. You're just doing math nobody showed you. One more line item. Line item 7, debt service. Minimum payments only, not paying anything down, just servicing what's there. Average student loan payment around $200. Credit card minimum on an average balance, call it $100. $300 a month total. Running total, $3,465. Take home, $3,000. Gap, negative $465. Every month, $50,000 a year. Used car, 1 bedroom, home cooked meals, minimum debt payments, negative $4, $65. And that assumes 0 restaurant meals, 0 deductible hit, 0 car repair surprises, nothing optional. Real life adds $200 to $500 on top. The actual gap is probably closer to $700 or $800. Now, let's talk about the advice. Save 20%. 20% of $3,000 is $600 a month. The survival floor already exceeds take home by $465. So the advice is asking for $600 on top of a gap that's already negative. That's not a savings goal. That's a $1,065 monthly impossibility, and the people selling it never ran your math to find out. You haven't been failing the advice. The advice was built on an assumption your math doesn't support. I know the first objection. Depends on where you live. Let's run all 3. Low cost of living, smaller, Midwest city, parts of the South. Rent 1,000 instead of 1,500. Everything else the same. Survival floor, 2,965. Against 3,000 take home at 50,000 a year. 35 bucks a month. That's it. That's your margin in the cheapest markets in the country. $35 for everything that isn't on the survival list. High cost of living. 1 bedroom in Denver, Seattle, coastal California, rent $2,800. You're probably making $65,000 to justify the move, take home around $4,200. Survival floor with $2,800 rent, $4,765. Gap, negative $526. You moved to the expensive city, got the raise, and the margin's still negative. The structure holds everywhere. This isn't a coastal problem. In the cheapest markets in the country, the margin at $50,000 a year is functionally zero. Here's how structural it is. A rough comparison. In 2000, median income was around $50,000 nominal. Survival costs then rent roughly $600. Insurance contribution around $50, groceries $300, car $400, utilities and phone around $190. Rough floor, around $1,540 a month, against take-home of around $3,200. Margin, about $1,660. These are estimates, the direction is real, the precise 2000 numbers are approximate. 2026, negative $465. That's a swing of more than $2,000 a month in 26 years. It didn't evaporate. It transferred to institutional landlords like Blackstone and Invitation Homes, who converted the single-family rental market after 2008, to insurance carriers who shifted premium costs from employer to employee over 3 decades while posting record revenues, to food conglomerates who used supply chain disruption as cover for a margin reset and kept the prices after the chaos cleared, to auto infrastructure that eliminated every alternative. 4 industries, 26 years, $2,000 a month. Nobody called a press conference. Each one just optimized its own line item and the total landed on your kitchen table. So what do? I'm going to give you 5 moves, and I want to be clear about what kind of video this is. This is the diagnosis, not the cure. The cure is separate, but the diagnosis changes what the first move actually is, and that matters. The first thing you do is run your actual floor. Today. Not next week, today. Open a spreadsheet or a piece of paper, I don't care, and add up rent, insurance, food, car, phone, utilities, and minimum debt service. Compare it to your actual take-home, not gross income, take-home. Most people have never done this, not because they're avoiding it, but because nobody told them it was the most important financial calculation they'd ever run. Your actual gap is the foundation of everything else. You'll either find a gap you didn't know existed, or you'll confirm a dread you've been carrying for years. Either way, you're working with facts instead of fog, and you can work with facts. The second thing, and this one costs nothing, is to stop following advice built for a different margin. If your floor comes back negative or under 200, save 20% is not your plan right now. Your plan is stabilize the floor, find what's movable, build from whatever margin actually exists. That's not failure, that's precision. The people who know their real gap and build for it will outperform the people who keep trying to execute a plan that was never designed for their math and doing nothing because it feels impossible. Third thing, look at your 7 line items and find the one with the most leverage. Housing is the biggest, but usually the hardest to move fast. The car is often the second biggest and the most movable refinance. Downgrade, pay it off early, eventually eliminate the payment entirely. Debt service compounds fastest if ignored at 22% APR on a credit card. That monthly deficit doesn't sit there, it grows. Find your largest movable lever and pull one thing, not 7. And look, I know 5 things sounds like a list. It's not. It's one thing, then the next. You don't do all 5. You find which one applies to your floor. Fourth, and this one might be the harder conversation, if the gap is negative and there's no movable cost lever, the problem has to close from the income side. What your time is actually worth, what an hour of your labor generates versus what you're paid for it, that's a different video. But it's the next logical step. Knowing your floor is what tells you whether cost reduction or income growth is the correct first move. A lot of people spend years optimizing the cost side of a problem that can only really be solved on the income side. And fifth, and this one matters if there's any margin at all, even 35 bucks a month, the first target is 10,000, not because of an arbitrary rule, because at 10 grand, the math actually changes. What becomes possible at that number? What stops feeling impossible? That's its own episode. But know the target. Any margin you have, that's where it's going. Here's where we are. The survival floor in 2026 costs more than most people watching this make. Not because they're spending wrong, not because they're undisciplined. Because 5 separate industries each optimized one line item: housing, healthcare, food, transportation, debt. And the personal finance industry built an advice curriculum on top of a gap. Those 5 industries spent 26 years quietly closing. The math doesn't lie, and neither does your bank account. The advice isn't a moral standard you failed. It's math built on an assumption that doesn't survive contact with your Tuesday. Know your floor. Know your gap. Stop following advice built for someone else's numbers. Build a system for the margin you actually have, even if it starts at 35 bucks. Now you do.